Now, the simmering unrest in Northern Ireland. Protesters have been out on the street in Belfast for the past 2 days in advance of an annual parade tomorrow. NewsHour special correspondent Ciara Kay looks at the ongoing religious tensions 14 years after Ireland's sectarian conflict formally ended.
It's a compelling sight, the parades that wind their way down the Shankill Road in the heart of Belfast's Protestant community. This parade is one of the first of the so-called marching season, when during the summer months, Protestant Northern Ireland residents loyal to the United Kingdom commemorate a series of historic moments. The largest takes place tomorrow, July 12th, honoring Protestant King William's victory over his Catholic rival in 1690. Wesley McCready has been marching the Shankill Road for 50 years.
It's very much important the way of the Shankill Road. The Shankill Road are a very loyal people, a very worthwhile people, and they all stick together.
That's what I was brought up to believe in too. It's my culture.
For Joanne Harrison and her husband Tommy, the parades are a family tradition, but also a matter of self-preservation.
Have to keep the culture going.
Have to keep it going. We have to keep walking. It's the Queen's Road, it's the Queen's Highway.
You have to keep it going. Why?
Well, if we don't, the other side's going to take over.
The other side she refers to are the Catholics living just a few blocks away. The Shankill is virtually encircled by Catholic neighborhoods, and this small area where West and North Belfast meet saw some of the worst violence of the 30 years of sectarian conflict here, known as the Troubles. 3,500 people died in bombings, assassinations, and clashes between nationalist militants like the IRA and the British Army and loyalist paramilitaries. In 1998, peace came with an agreement that maintained Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom, but brought Catholic Nationalist Party Sinn Féin into government in a power-sharing arrangement with its former loyalist foes.
It has been a remarkable journey. We're now in the control, effectively, of one of the most successful peace processes in the world today.
Martin McGuinness, once a militant IRA commander, is now co-leader of the power-sharing government.
Throughout the course of the last 14 or 15 years, many things that were considered unimaginable have actually happened.
Downtown Belfast, once cordoned off by security fences and army checkpoints, now hosts bustling streets and cafes. A new museum about the Titanic, built in Belfast, beckons tourists.
We've been working away at trying to attract foreign direct investment. We've brought in thousands of jobs over the course of the last couple of years. You go on the streets of Belfast and Derry, there's been a transformation. All that said, we're still very conscious of the fact that a lot of work needs to be done.
The peace agreement did certain things in that it brought Sinn Féin and the IRA out of the political wilderness to some extent and into the institutions of power. But it didn't deal with some of the wider issues of Northern Ireland, which are around segregation and hostility between the two dominant communities.
Dr. Neil Jarman directs the Institute for Conflict Research. He says that while the peace agreement has brought a welcome end to full-scale violence, parts of the country remain divided and on edge.
In Belfast, they're most visibly expressed in working-class communities, which are almost entirely segregated. And the tensions really break out where those residential areas meet, where a Catholic area butts up against a Protestant area.
North and West Belfast resemble a patchwork quilt. Catholic and Protestant neighborhoods alternate every few blocks, sometimes dramatically separated by physical barriers called peace walls. Most were built during the Troubles, but some have gone up even since the peace agreement, as intercommunal attacks continued. Stark and sometimes militaristic murals make it impossible to escape the weight of history and identity here. Jarman says that while a great deal of the year the streets here are calm, that changes during the marching season, with the palpable culture clash the parades bring.
Parades can cause very real tensions because it's almost impossible to find a route through North Belfast that doesn't come into contact with a Catholic area or a Protestant area.
In recent years, parades have sparked upheaval. First come the protests by Catholic community groups over the parades passing through their area, followed later in the evening by full-scale riots of angry youth. Last year, the riots cost $2.5 million to police.
We need to understand, appreciate and respect
the fact that we have cultural differences, we have historical differences, and religious and political differences here in Northern Ireland.
Winston Irvine defends the Protestant community's right to march at annual negotiations over the parade's routing through the most contentious streets.
We as a Protestant community understand that there are different perceptions and there are different notions towards loyal order parades. But I think that the only way to discuss those issues is round the table, and I think it's totally illegitimate to use any means of violence to protest or to express opposition to someone else's culture.
The parade is it's triumphalism of the Protestants against the Catholics. It brings us back 20 years every time that parade goes down the road. You know, it brings this community back to what we've tried to move on and tried to let everybody else see that it has moved on.
Outreach worker Fernando Murphy lives in the Ardoyne neighbourhood, a particularly poor and marginalised Catholic community. Peace walls virtually encircle Ardoyne, creating what Murphy describes as a siege mentality. And he fears the upcoming July 12th parade will roil communal tensions yet again.
Across the way there's the Protestant area and this side is the Catholic side. And the 12th of July parade comes up here. It comes up past here and comes into the Catholic area and up past all these houses. All these shops have to shut. People can't go about their normal daily life, which usually culminates in a riot situation.
Protestant Representative Winston Irvine says the two communities have to find a way to agree on parading.
The single biggest, most important aspect of reconciliation for Unionists and for Protestants living, particularly in working class areas of Northern Ireland, will be to see a resolution to the parading dispute. That will be a visible affirmation that reconciliation has begun.
But Fernando Murphy says his Catholic community will never accept the parades on their streets. So instead, his organization runs field trips for local youths to remove them from the area on July 12th.
Community groups actually don't want the people to be taken away. I can see their issue by saying, why should we remove our young people from our area because of one parade? Why doesn't the parade just remove itself from our area? We see it necessary because it stops young people from getting a criminal record or being exposed to sectarian violence.
On the streets of North and West Belfast, young people are living with the reality of segregation. Kids in Protestant neighbourhoods are busy building towering bonfires to be lit on the eve of the July 12th march.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
I love it. Because, I don't know, I've been waiting for this time of the year all year to start collecting for the bonfire.
There's nothing to do about these here streets, so whenever the bonfire comes out, there's just really something to do.
Do you ever go into the Catholic neighbourhoods?
Not really, no.
How come?
Just probably end up getting hurt if you end up caught over there.
Just the religion. People still feel differently here?
Yeah, conflict hasn't changed, to be honest with you.
Among a group of Catholic kids on the other side of town, there is some initial bluster.
They're orange bastards.
Over in Belfast,
they're British.
They're orange bastards?
Yeah, they're British, so they're not our people.
They're not your people.
No.
But then also some promising signs of curiosity.
You'd like to meet some Protestants?
Oh, I would.
Really?
Just
You'd like to understand them a little bit?
See if they get on like us. See if they're different.
Would any of you go to the same school with them?
Nah, I would like.
I would.
You would? Why?
Just
see it's like.
See what it's like.
See what it's like.
More than 90% of Northern Ireland's schools are segregated.
And listen to the sentence.
But Hazelwood Primary School is different. Its goal is integration. Patricia Murtaugh is the principal.
One of the things I think that parents that set up a school like ours were banking on, that the relationships that the children would establish here would be continued as they got older. And as they got older, they would realise the significance of those relationships, that I'm living in a Catholic area, my friend's living in a Protestant area, and yet we're still friends.
The school maintains a strict sectarian balance, both in numbers of students and topics covered. But even Hazelwood's campus abuts a peace wall, erected just a few years ago when nearby homes were torched.
And actually we use it as a discussion point with our children too. You know, it's a resource, and we go and talk to them and we ask, why is it there, and why do you think that people, felt threatened sufficiently to have something like that constructed.
For schools like Hazelwood to become the norm and for communities to integrate, activists are looking towards removing the peace walls bit by bit. Alexandra Park has been split in half for 18 years. But now, in an experiment, the gates are being opened from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays.
As it moves on, The intention is that the gates will be open rather than they will be closed. And once that norm has become established, you can then take away the rest of the fence. It will take a long time, but we'll get there.
You can't flick a switch and go from darkness into light. It's a process, and it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of recognition by people within communities that we have to work together.
The Northern Ireland Parades Commission has now ruled that this year's July 12th march must end earlier than in previous years, in an attempt to avoid clashes with protesters. Protestant politicians called the decision outrageous. Catholics said it didn't go far enough.
Kira's story is part of the series Fault Lines of Faith, produced in partnership with the Bureau for International Reporting. You can learn more about their stories by following a link on our website. Plus, on our World page, read about how one group is using video diaries to try to bridge the divide between Catholic and Protestant youth in Belfast.